French teachers in shock and in mourning after a history professor is killed. The 47-year-old had shown his students pictures of the Prophet Muhammad. Rallies in his honour are planned across France today. In other world news, a truce goes ignored in Nagorno-Karabakh. Just minutes after midnight, Armenia and Azerbaijan accusing each other of breaching the terms of the peace. And millions in Guinea head to the polls as President Alpha Condé seeks a third term in office. Our reporters in Conakry have been asking voters what the key issues are for them as they cast their ballots today. Those are the international news headlines this hour. Thank you very much for joining us. You're watching France 24. First, rallies will take place across France a bit later today in the memory of a teacher killed in the suburbs of Paris on Friday. The victim, who taught history and geography, has been named as 47-year-old Samuel Paty. Now, anti-terrorist prosecutors say he'd received several threats after showing one of his classes cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. The French President Emmanuel Macron has called his murder, quote, an act of Islamist terrorism.
A community still reeling from a brutal attack. Outside the school where history teacher Samuel Paty worked, they came to pay their respects to the man who many still can't believe is gone.
Je me suis dit que je suis sortie des cours et 10 minutes après, il est mort.
C'était un homme discret, donc jamais il y a eu de choses polémiques sur lui.
The 47-year-old teacher was murdered on Friday after leaving school. The assailant was shot dead by police on the scene, and preliminary investigations have revealed more about the attacker. The 18-year-old was born in Moscow, was of Chechen origin, and was previously unknown to police anti-radicalization intelligence services. He had been granted refugee status in France and lived in Évreux in Normandy, almost 100 kilometers west of the crime scene. Police looking for a connection between the attacker and the victim have turned to social media. As part of a course on freedom of expression, Samuel Paty had recently shown the controversial cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad that had sparked the Charlie Hebdo attacks in 2015. Despite Paty offering Muslim pupils the chance to leave the classroom if they would be offended, threats had been made against him in the wake of the class.
On the evening of the 7th of October, the father of a pupil posted on Facebook a story about the viewing of a naked image of the Prophet and a call for protest against the teacher, with the aim of getting him sacked.
Multiple people have been detained, including the assailant's close family and the father who created the social media posts, among others. Investigations are still underway.
Well, a bit earlier today, France 24 spoke to a teacher here in Paris about some of the challenges he and his colleagues face at work. Jean-Rémy Gérard is also the vice president of France's Union of Middle and High School Teachers. He told us the state needs to do more to keep teachers safe at school. Take a listen.
We need better protection, but for that we need unity. That's very important because secularism, French laïcité, is sometimes a very touchy subject in France. And for SNALC, my union, we think that we need unity about this subject, and we all need to say the same thing, and we all need to say, for example, that yes, we are allowed to show cartoons, blasphemous cartoons in class in order to teach. And that's the main point, the main issue. If we're able to do that together, I think things can change. SNALC, my union, received a lot of messages from teachers, and most of them want to teach about that, want to raise those subjects when we come back from this holiday. And the 2nd of November, I think in France, we will have a lot of teaching about freedom of speech, about freedom of the press, about cartoons, about blasphemy, and about secularism.
Yeah, well, meanwhile, there was a rush to get home early here in Paris yesterday evening as the first night of a 9 p.m. curfew came into force. The curfew is also in place in 8 other French cities where the coronavirus is running particularly high. Now, the government has said the 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. shutdown will initially last a month, but may be extended if COVID-19 cases continue to rise. France, of course, not alone, though, in imposing new restrictions. Millions of Europeans are facing tough new measures starting this weekend. This as the WHO has reported a 44% rise in European coronavirus cases in 1 week alone. Now, across the globe, infections are surging, including in Iran. The country is the worst affected in the Middle East and is currently in the grips of a third wave of infections. Our correspondent Reza Sayah reports from Tehran.
The worry, the uncertainty, the concern is palpable here in Iran because by all accounts, the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic here in Iran is worse than ever. More people are dying than ever. More people are being infected than ever. And at this point, there's no indication that the government has a new strategy to stem the spread of the virus, other than variations of restrictions that were already put in place. Over the past several days, we've seen some dismal milestones that have been reached. Yesterday, the daily death toll hit 253. That put the total death toll here in Iran at more than 30,000 people dead. No other country in the Middle East has had more people die from the coronavirus than Iran. Over the past several weeks, we've had the daily death toll consistently top 200. On Wednesday, the daily death toll hit 279. That was a record daily death toll. And also last week, Iran's deputy health minister making an eye-opening statement saying that it is very likely that the actual death toll is double the reported death toll because, he said, a lot of people dying from COVID-19 symptoms have not been tested for COVID-19, and that's why they're not being entered in the official reports. In countries like Iran, where the severity has escalated, where we've had statistics go up, you've seen governments employ drastic measures like curfews and lockdowns. We haven't seen that yet, and that has a lot of people concerned. And it's these statistics and it's these statements, like we heard from the health minister, that have a lot of people here in Iran calling this the third wave of the coronavirus. The first wave hit in March, in April, then things quieted down. Then in June, you had a second spike, and now you have this most recent spike.
That's Reza Sayah for us there. Now let's have a look at the latest developments in the escalating conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. A humanitarian truce was supposed to come into effect at midnight last night, but within minutes of that deal going into effect, allegations of breaching the peace had already started. Armenia first accusing Azerbaijan of firing rockets and shells just after midnight. This before Baku accused Yerevan of also not keeping to the terms of the ceasefire. Here's a closer look at what unfolded overnight.
The agreement was barely minutes old, and the accusations started once again. A spokesperson for Armenia's defense ministry has accused Azeri forces of breaking a humanitarian ceasefire in the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh that went into force at midnight on Saturday night.
Once again violating the humanitarian ceasefire, the enemy fired artillery shells in the northern direction from 12:04 a.m. to 2:45 a.m. and fired rockets in the southern direction from 2:20 to 2:45 a.m.
Azerbaijan, in return, accused Armenia of breaking the truce. Conflict ignited in the breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh in late September, and the fighting that has followed has left hundreds dead. Saturday's truce was announced after a missile strike on Azerbaijan's second-largest city, Ganja, escalated the violence, killing and wounding dozens, including children.
Ve onlar bu cinayete göre məsuliyyət daşımalıdırlar və daşıyacaqlar. Biz isə onların cavabını döyüş meydanında veririk.
Armenian separatists claim it was a response to attacks by the Azerbaijani army on Nagorno-Karabakh's capital Stepanakert and other towns in the disputed region.
Никто, не знаю, вот Как можно вот так халатно относиться к таким людям, которые живут в Степанакерте?
It's the war inside's second attempt to quell the fighting after a Russia-mediated ceasefire was violated within hours last week. The fighting is the worst in the region since 1994, when a truce ended a brutal war between the two sides.
Now, voting has begun this Sunday morning in Guinea, where President Alpha Condé is seeking a third term in office. The mood in the West African country in the run-up to the election has been tense. Condé pushed through a new constitution a bit earlier this year, enabling him to run for a third time. And alongside protests against that move, this year Guineans have also been grappling with an economic crisis. Our team in Conakry have been speaking to voters, asking them what the key issues are for them when they cast their ballots today.
Medina is the largest market in Conakry, where thousands of Guineans come every day to man stalls or do their shopping. Boubacar, a salesman, hopes that youth employment will be the winner's priority.
La Medina ici, il y a beaucoup de jeunes, ce sont des universités, sortant des universités, bon, diplômés sans emploi, ils viennent à Medina ici pour se débrouiller. D'autres font taxi-moto, donc parce qu'il n'y a pas de travail. Oui, il n'y a pas de travail. Donc quand on voit un nouveau président, il n'a qu'à voir le travail des jeunesses là aussi.
More than half of the Guinean population lives below the poverty line, according to the World Bank, a situation made worse by the health crisis as food prices soared due to COVID-19. This family on the outskirts of Conakry wants to see their purchasing power increase.
Quand tu payes 1 kilo de viande à 50 000 francs guinéens et puis quand tu veux faire une sauce, tu vas dépenser éventuellement 100 000 francs guinéens. C'est pas du tout facile pour nous quand même. Et le poisson, tout coûte cher à l'heure là. Et j'aimerais vraiment que le nouveau président fasse quelque chose pour ça.
Despite its rich mining sector, 62 years after its independence, Guinea is still struggling to really take off. For this entrepreneur who works in the health and hygiene sector, the country's priority should be to strengthen the rule of law.
Moi, particulièrement, c'est d'abord le respect des lois, une justice sociale pour tous, l'éducation et la santé. Les infrastructures, ça viendra après. Parce que quels que soient les moyens que vous mettez dans les infrastructures sanitaires, hôtelières et autres, si les gens ne sont pas éduqués, mais qui va les utiliser? Personne.
Guinea sits near the bottom of the United Nations Human Development Index, ranking 175th out of 189 countries, a sign that the future president still has a lot to do to improve the country's standards.
Our team in Guinea with that report. Now, it was on January the 21st, 2017, the day after Donald Trump's inauguration, that millions of Americans took to the streets to protest the president's attitude towards women and minorities. The Women's March was the largest one-day protest in American history. And this Saturday, the same streets were filled with protesters again, men and women gathering this time in their thousands to protest the Supreme Court nomination of Amy Coney Barrett and to build momentum to vote Trump out of the White House. Fraser Jackson has more on the day's events.
A procession stretching through the streets of the American capital. Thousands of women rallying against US President Donald Trump with the presidential election just over 2 weeks away. Scattered throughout the protest, people dressed as the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, heralded as an icon for her fight for women's rights.
No justice!
Many of the protesters wary of her potential replacement, Amy Coney Barrett, as Republicans rushed to push her confirmation through the Senate before November's vote.
She just can't get confirmed. We were really big RBG fans, and it was a really big hit when she passed away.
This Supreme Court nominee will affect my children in the future, and this is the biggest thing that I know that I could do to help make change.
As a smaller number of people counter-protested, the women renewed their rally cry, "Dump Trump," something many see as their only hope for change. Across the US, over 100,000 people are said to have taken part in over 430 marches, from Los Angeles to Chicago, Fort Lauderdale to New York. In Ruth Bader Ginsburg's home of Brooklyn, protesters implored people to get out to vote.
It's so important that people vote, and I'm telling people to vote blue for Biden and Harris because Trump has been a disaster for our country.
Historically, the marchers have been supported by multiple celebrities and members of other groups such as the LGBTQ community and other minorities, who also see Donald Trump as a threat to their rights.
Those are our top stories on France 24. Thank you for watching.